The National Electrical Code, specifically Article 440.52, mandates the installation of a 120-volt single-phase receptacle outlet for servicing purposes on or within sight of roof-mounted heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, or HVAC, equipment. This requirement is in place to provide a readily available power source for service technicians to use when performing maintenance, troubleshooting, or repairs on the HVAC unit. The NEC specifies that the receptacle outlet must be rated for a minimum of 20 amps. This ensures that it can handle the power demands of various tools and equipment that service technicians may use, such as test instruments, portable lighting, or small power tools. A standard 15-amp receptacle outlet would not be sufficient, as it may not be able to handle the load and could potentially overload the circuit. In addition to the amperage rating, the NEC also requires that the receptacle outlet be ground fault circuit interrupter, or GFCI, protected. GFCI protection is a critical safety measure that helps to prevent electrical shocks. A GFCI constantly monitors the current flowing through a circuit. If it detects an imbalance which could indicate that current is leaking to ground through a person, it will quickly trip the circuit, cutting off the power and preventing a potentially fatal shock. The GFCI protection requirement is particularly important for rooftop HVAC units, as they are often exposed to wet or damp conditions which can increase the risk of electrical shock. The phrase within sight means that the receptacle outlet must be located in a place where it is easily visible from the HVAC equipment. This ensures that service technicians can easily find the receptacle and plug in their tools or equipment without having to search for it. The specific distance that constitutes within sight is not explicitly defined in NEC, but it is generally interpreted to mean that the receptacle outlet should be no more than 50 feet away from the HVAC unit and that there should be a clear line of sight between the two. The requirement for a 120-volt receptacle outlet on or near rooftop HVAC units is intended to improve the safety and efficiency of servicing these units. By providing a readily available power source, it eliminates the need for technicians to run long extension cords from other parts of the building, which can be a safety hazard. It also ensures that technicians have access to a reliable power source, which can help them to diagnose and repair problems more quickly and efficiently. When installing a 120-volt receptacle outlet for a rooftop HVAC unit, it is important to follow all applicable requirements of the NEC, as well as any local codes or regulations. This includes using the correct type of wiring, conduit, and fittings, as well as properly grounding the receptacle outlet. It is also important to ensure that the receptacle outlet is installed in a weatherproof enclosure to protect it from the elements. The purpose of NEC Article 440.52 requiring a 120-volt receptacle is primarily to ensure the safety and convenience of service personnel working on rooftop HVAC equipment. It is not intended to provide a general-purpose power source for other uses. Having a dedicated, readily accessible, and GFCI-protected receptacle promotes safer working conditions and reduces the potential for electrical hazards. The 20-amp minimum rating ensures the receptacle can handle the loads of common service tools without overloading. The within-sight requirement minimizes the need for long, potentially hazardous extension cords. Furthermore, the requirement ensures compliance with recognized safety standards, helping to protect service personnel from electrical shock and other hazards associated with working on electrical equipment in potentially challenging environments. This enhances overall safety practices in the maintenance and servicing of rooftop HVAC units. This specific code reference, Article 440.52, falls under NEC Article 440, which covers air conditioning and refrigeration equipment. Article 440 provides comprehensive requirements for the installation and wiring of this type of equipment, including disconnects, overcurrent protection, and grounding. Article 440.52 is specifically dedicated to the receptacle outlet requirement. Several factors influence the inclusion of this requirement in the NEC. Firstly, safety concerns were a primary driver. Rooftop HVAC units often require periodic maintenance and repairs, and technicians working on this equipment may need to use electrical tools and testing devices. Without a readily available receptacle, technicians might resort to using long extension cords, which can create dripping hazards and increase the risk of electrical shock. Secondly, convenience and efficiency were also considered. By providing a dedicated receptacle near the equipment, technicians can avoid the time-consuming task of finding a suitable power source elsewhere in the building. This allows them to focus on the maintenance or repair work, improving their efficiency and reducing downtime. Thirdly, standardization and consistency were important goals. By including the requirement in the NEC, it ensures that all installations of rooftop HVAC equipment include a receptacle outlet, regardless of the location or contractor involved. This helps to promote consistent safety practices and reduces the potential for errors or omissions. The enforcement of NEC Article 440.52 typically falls under the jurisdiction of local building and electrical inspectors. During inspections of new construction or alterations, inspectors will verify that the receptacle outlet is installed in accordance with the code requirements. This includes verifying the voltage, amperage, GFCI protection, and location of the receptacle outlet. If the installation does not comply with the code, the inspector may issue a violation notice and require the contractor to correct the issue. In some cases, failure to comply with the NEC can result in fines or other penalties. The NEC is updated every 3 years, and changes or revisions to Article 440.52 are possible in future editions. These changes may be driven by new technologies, industry best practices, or safety concerns. It is important for electrical contractors and engineers to stay up to date on the latest edition of the NEC to ensure compliance with the most current requirements. The requirements outlined in NEC Article 440.52 can also have implications for the design and planning of rooftop HVAC installations. Engineers and architects should consider the location of the receptacle outlet when designing the building and the HVAC system. They should ensure that the receptacle outlet is easily accessible to service technicians and that it is not obstructed by other equipment or building features. Additionally, they should consider the electrical load requirements of the HVAC equipment and the receptacle outlet when sizing the electrical service for the building. Several practical considerations should be taken into account when installing a 120-volt receptacle for rooftop HVAC units. Firstly, the location of the receptacle should be carefully chosen to ensure that it is easily accessible to service technicians and that it is within sight of the HVAC equipment. The receptacle should also be protected from the elements such as rain, snow, and sunlight. Secondly, the receptacle should be installed in a weatherproof enclosure to prevent moisture from entering the electrical connections. The enclosure should be properly sealed and should be made of a durable material that can withstand the harsh rooftop environment. Thirdly, the wiring for the receptacle should be properly sized to handle the load of the HVAC equipment and any other tools or equipment that may be plugged into the receptacle. The wiring should also be protected from physical damage by running it through conduit or other protective means. Fourthly, the receptacle should be properly grounded to prevent electrical shock. The grounding conductor should be connected to the building's grounding system and should be sized according to the NEC requirements. Fifthly, the receptacle should be GFCI protected to provide additional protection against electrical shock. The GFCI device should be tested regularly to ensure that it is functioning properly. The installation of a 120-volt receptacle for rooftop HVAC units requires careful planning and attention to detail. By following the requirements of the NEC and the practical considerations outlined above, it is possible to ensure that the installation is safe, reliable, and compliant with all applicable codes and regulations. This requirement contributes significantly to the safety and efficiency of HVAC maintenance and repair operations.